characteristic of monopolistic firms is that there are some reason why other firms don't enter the market. So what we want to talk about is three broad classes of entry barriers. The first entry barrier is the control of a scarce resource. If one firm controls the input that's needed to make a certain product, then nobody else will be able to enter the market. Two common examples that are often cited in the literature are Alcoa, which was a monopoly for many, many years, used to own all of the bauxite in the world, or essentially all of the bauxite in the world, which was a key input into the production of aluminum. Nobody else could get their hands on bauxite, nobody else can make aluminum, and for a long, long time Alcoa had a monopoly on the production of aluminum. De Beers had a monopoly in the market for diamonds, mostly by controlling the way that they were sold through wholesalers, but also through ownership of very, very large shares of the diamond mines in the world. And then finally, another more current example perhaps is the NCAA, which has control over the schools which produce college sports. There's no sort of way to compete with, to set up an alternative system to compete with the NCAA, because the NCAA has such a stronghold over its member schools. The second source of monopoly power is to think about government regulation. And there are a lot of markets where governments will limit entry for various reasons. Sources of government regulation that provide monopoly rights or monopoly protections, or at least some degree of market power, include licensing, include patents, the granting of patents to inventors, and include copyright protection. An example here, for instance, in Illinois is the market for casino gambling, where casinos are only allowed to operate if they have a license. And the government grants a very small number of licenses with a very small geographic, or with a significant geographic restriction. In other words, the only way you could compete, for instance, with the casino in Des Plaines, Illinois, is by getting your hands on a government license, but the government won't allow you a license. So in that small territory, the Rivers Casino in Des Plaines has monopoly rights due to the ownership of this license. Patents exist, for instance, when drug companies invent new medicines. Drug companies that invent new drugs will have the exclusive right to market those drugs for some period of time. And during the time where they hold this patent protection, no other companies will be allowed to enter the market. And then also, if you think about intellectual property, when somebody writes a song, and this is a popular topic these days when people are thinking about internet piracy and Napster and things like that, but when I write a song, once it's out there, I retain the exclusive right to sell it to other people. And one of the things that is interesting about this market is that it's very easy, it's very inexpensive to copy a song and send it to your friends or share it through file sharing systems and things like that. But the government tries to do things to protect the creators of intellectual property from having their output sold at very, very low cost by other people, or even in some cases given away. The last type of monopoly, the last type of entry barrier that we'll talk about is the natural monopoly. And in this case, firms have economies of scale over a very large range of output. And these markets are best served by one firm. One example of this, and we'll spend a little bit more time on this later in the lecture, one example of this is Sirius and XM radio. It's very expensive to put a satellite up in space, but it's very cheap for Sirius and XM to hook up another subscriber. The market may be better served, and it may be more inexpensive for consumers when the market only has one satellite up in space producing satellite radio signals, rather than two separate firms each building their own satellite. The market may very well just be able to produce at lower cost if we have one firm doing it rather than two. And we'll come back to this a little bit later.